You guys, we have broken the curse. We have broken the curse. It was not pretty. It was not pretty. It was not free flowing. It was not anything out of, what I think what people wanted to see, which was Arsenal really scoring a lot of goals and being super attacking and all that kind of stuff. But we got the job done. It's our second game on the road where we beat a team 1-0, and just a good away performance in terms of defensive solidity, not giving away silly opportunities, things like that. But there's still questions around Arsenal and the attack, whether or not we're getting the most out of the attack. Why are we not looking as free flowing? Is it just the other team have the opportunity to stop us because they're sitting deeper? Or are there other reasons that are like keeping us from getting to where we were last season? I think a lot of people are hoping to see the free flowing, exciting football from Arsenal last season. And in this game, like every other game this season, we've seen maybe one or two moments of that. But for the most part, it's Arsenal sitting, at the halfway line, trying to probe, trying to find an opening, trying to find where the seam is, trying to be really precise. And it just kind of ends up with, unfortunately, a little bit of the shoe horseshoe of death. It ends with Arsenal kind of, maybe overpassing and overdoing it. And it's not fun to watch. It's not exciting. It's not fun to watch. So I do think there's questions. People are concerned, but you can think of it one of two ways. Arsenal are, getting results and grinding out results despite not playing as good as they possibly can. And at some point, when all the pieces make sense and people have played together for longer periods of time, it'll all click. Or something's not right. And it just depends on how you think about things. Personally, for me, I'm thinking that some players just haven't kicked into gear yet. Some of our stars are not really having their best performances yet. There are some players that are trying to find their feet. But ultimately, as long as we're getting the results, we give ourselves an opportunity to get to that next level without freaking out. If you lose this game, there's so much pressure on the Tottenham game. There's still pressure on the Tottenham game, but you go into it level on points, just a couple points behind Manchester City, and you put yourself in a good position to go into it feeling like it's not the end of the world, And so I think there's still questions around how we get the best out of the attack, and did we recruit properly, all those types of things. But clean sheets away from home, we do that. We do that. And we had a debut for David Raya. We'll talk about that as well. And Fabio Vieira played at Goodison Park. And guess what? The world didn't end. Just like I told you guys, everybody was making a big deal out of nothing. I thought, all things considered, Fabio Vieira had a good game today. He had some chances where he should have definitely put the ball in the back of the net, or at least taken a shot a little bit sooner. But all in all, he wasn't getting ran over in midfield by anybody. He made a good account of himself. And I do think that when you have 80% possession, you do need to pick a team that kind of puts you in a position to do your best with the ball. And Fabio does that. It's a shame that Martinelli didn't get to stay on the pitch, because I think the combination of Martinelli and Vieira really works. And early on, with Trossard and Fabio Vieira, you could see that there was some confusion there. But ultimately, again, Fabio Vieira is not a bum. May have convinced yourself of that because he wasn't perfect in his first season. But that guy knows how to play, so I was happy for him as well, if that makes sense. It's a good away performance. Nashville says Jesus getting match fitness again should help us against low blocks. Kandwani says it was a solid away. Clock Orange says we are playing very different tactics to the last season. We are methodical and passing with purpose. It takes time before it clicks, need more games. Dark Side of the Moon says, just speaking pure facts, after 5 games, I would say top 4 is more likely. However, my ambition is we should and must challenge for the league. Christopher says, great win. Exactly. Like, it's one of those where, I don't think we need to put any more on it than what it is. We don't need to go out there and say like that was a perfect performance. It definitely was not. I do think if we get that initial goal that's called offside, things change a lot from there. I think you get an earlier goal, you're able to kind of put more pressure on them and they crumble. But they had something to hold on to for a longer period of time because they were at 0-0. And so I think that's unfortunate that we weren't able to get that goal. But Kandwani is saying a solid, controlled performance. And you are seeing that Arsenal are controlling the games a lot more. Our games are more boring than they were last season. Last season, every game was exciting. Like literally, we never had boring games. Either we were completely wiping teams away or we just gave them enough of a nugget to actually think that they could win it. And then we came back with a response or we scored in the 90th minute or whatever. And so we were a lot more exciting, I think, for the neutral and for Arsenal fans last season. But this season, all of our games have kind of followed the same script. From Nottingham Forest on, we have all the control, all of the possession. We're pretty much sitting at the halfway line, passing it around, trying to find openings. We're not being that many chances. And it could be something that just needs time. But I also just feel like some individuals have not clicked yet. I'm watching players, like I think almost everybody in the back line looks like they looked last season. Ben White, Gabriel, Saliba, they kind of look like themselves. Zinchenko's coming back in and he kind of looks like Zinchenko. I think things from the back line forward, I'm seeing some performances from players that are usually a lot better than they are now, but it could just be a little bit of hangover from last season or just they're not in form. And hopefully at some point they do come into form because we really need that. S90 says, I'm still relatively calm about our start. I'll take ugly wins if we click into gear in the second half of the season. And that's all it really is. It's like at some point we do expect for it to click, but there's still a chance that, maybe it doesn't. That's all I'm saying, but it should click. This team is good enough. Like we've definitely done a lot better in terms of like having enough depth and stuff like that. So it should. But we broke the curse, which is super important. We have not beat them since 2017. And so, being able to break that, I think is super important without any relatively like being scared or like Everton created next to nothing. Like we didn't create a lot, but we controlled the game. They created like nothing. Had they got a little smash and grab kind of like, last minute set piece, that would have felt so unfair considering the way that the game went. But it was a very controlled situation where we controlled the game. We were under very little threat. It was just whether or not we were going to find the goal and whether or not we were going to make a mistake to allow them in. And so, yeah, like that's just kind of where we're at right now. We got the 3 points and we broke the curse, which is super important. We're just wondering if it's going to click into something that looks a little bit more like last season. Samuel says, yeah, finally. I know, finally. Charles says, we lost there last season. For now, I'll take it. Exactly. Boy says, it's impossible to play to the same level as last season, whatever role that is that Xhaka does that has no name isn't all that simple a thing to replace. So if we're saying that there's no way that we can play to the same level, if not better than what we played last season, then basically why are we talking about challenging for the title? I don't understand that. Like we should be able to get to that next level. And if you're saying that the reason why we can't is because we have not replaced that Xhaka position properly, then we haven't recruited properly. And so we need to have a conversation about recruitment. Because we did spend 65 million on a midfielder and we spent 105 million on another. So I would imagine that those two players combined should be able to take us to the next level. If they're not, then, there's a conversation about recruitment. I'm not sure I really buy into this idea that there's no way we're going to play. Like we should just not expect to play as good as we did last season. If those are our expectations, then why are people talking about challenging for the title? I don't understand that. The Sheikh says 100% agree, Jess. We have to improve if we want to win the league. So yeah, exactly. Ampere says, congratulations on today's win, all Gooners onto PSV on Wednesday. Exactly. So let's go ahead and get into the nitty gritty though, because we do have to talk about the elephant in the room. And that is that we talked about this the other day. When did we think Raya would get his first start? And I said, would it be against Everton or against PSV or against Brentford? And most people said against Brentford or PSV. It ended up being today against Everton. And when I tell you guys that I was surprised, but I wasn't surprised at the same time because during international break or before international break, Sammy McBell did say that Arteta was looking to give Raya a run of games. And Arteta is not shy about doing anything. If he wants to make a change, he usually does it, whether you like it or not. Now, I do think that there was a smoother way to transition Ramsdale out, which wouldn't have been so out in the open. And that would have been to either give him PSV, Raya give PSV, or Brentford. But he decided to go for a Premier League game, which I do think put more pressure on this game than maybe we needed. We ended up winning the game and being under very little pressure. But I'll tell you this right now, listening to just the commentators and all the talking heads before the game, watching it on NBC, their narrative was that if we had lost that game, it was going to be because we did not keep Ramsdale in that goal, because they had already decided that we had created an unnecessary problem. That was, I think one guy said that Ramsdale's body language looked as if he had been defeated and there's problems in the dressing room. How his ass could know that without being anywhere near anybody at Arsenal, I do not know. He's just looking from his box telling us that we have problems in our dressing room. And then you have Lee Dixon and Robbie Earl saying that, Ramsdale is the better goalkeeper. And, talking about, instead of talking about anything else, they only talked about that. And for me, it's just like, I'm so glad we won the game, because even if it was a shot or a penalty or something that didn't even have anything to do with Raya, it would have been because of that. But now that you've made that decision, people are already assuming that Ramsdale's coming back into the game or back into the team against PSV. I don't actually agree with that. I think this is a full-on switch. I think the idea that we're resting Ramsdale, a goalkeeper that goalkeepers don't need rest, we're resting him for PSV, and they need to be able to, like, Raya needed some minutes. That's just never how the goalkeeper situation has ever been. And so this feels like a slow and methodical dropping from Mikel Arteta. And it was just like, okay, I got the international break, and then boom, he's in. I would not be surprised if Raya was in the goal against PSV, but the best thing that could have happened in this game is for us to win it, because the narrative of this game before it even started was that we were making a huge mistake with the goalkeeper situation, and that if we were to lose, it was going to be because of that, no matter what. And so I think this is a dropping and a changing of our number one goalkeeper situation. Some people have bought into the idea that this is some new era goalkeeping situation where they're going to share time. I don't know, y'all. What do you guys think? Dale says, like for like matches, Arsenal actually ahead of last season, 13 points to 12. Mr. says, I don't see a big deal because bottom 10 put Raya in. Azat says Raya looked very assured, had little to do, but you could see that he is better on the ball. Pizennet.org says Ramsdale is still the number one goalkeeper. GN says you're wrong. Ike says Raya was super composed. Our defense was much better, in my opinion. He didn't have much to do. I'm having a hard time. I would need to see us play against a better team I don't want to gas Raya too much. I do think he looked composed and decent on the ball. I think we did a lot more in terms of Zinchenko receiving and Rice receiving back to goal with somebody on the back of them, and being able to find those passes out wide. Those are things that we had completely stopped doing with Ramsdale. Ramsdale, I think, gave away the ball a couple of times trying to do that. I remember against Southampton was like the most egregious time where the space just wasn't there for Zinchenko to receive, and he literally passed it straight to Southampton, and they put it in the back of the net. During the run-in in the first minute of the game, we had completely stopped playing that way, where somebody would come in centrally with pressure and pass it out wide and relieve us from that pressure. And so we did a lot of that. He did look, he had a couple of claims as well that were good, but ultimately Everton didn't offer anything. So it's hard to see whether or not he was like so much better than Ramsdale, if that makes sense. But also like just his distribution, it was clean. It was clean. Kafunso says Raya knows he's better. Muyiwa says Raya's distribution was way better. So was so was his handling of crosses. Michael says, I think you'll see both Raya and Ramsdale have a run of 7 to 8 games at a time, not necessarily rotation, but I can't see either keeper becoming a FA Cup or Carabao keeper. So keep an eye on this. We will definitely keep an eye on this. I do think that, you know, it's a situation that's a little bit uncomfortable because it's not something that we typically see. But what I am happy about is that the goalkeeper that we've recruited to come in definitely fits our style of play, has very little to do, but doesn't make a mess of situations that should not be a mess. Now, nothing too bad happened in this game, but just like he was composed on the ball, looked ready to go. Like it was just like, okay, at least we know that we have a goalkeeper that can do the things that we want him to do. Is he better than Ramsdale? I think, like, if my overall opinion on Raya is that he is probably better than Ramsdale, but is he better in the Arsenal shirt yet? I don't know.